Good afternoon and welcome to the PHYSIOMICS PLC company update. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time by the Q&A tab situated in the right corner of your screen. Just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives in the meeting itself. However, the company can review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I'd like to submit the following poll. I'd now like to hand you over to Dr. Peter Sargent, CEO. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Thank you very much, and hello all, and thank you for joining our investor meeting today. So for those of you who have not met me before, my name's Peter Sargent, and as of last week I'm the newly appointed CEO here at PHYSIOMICS. I'm also joined here today by Dr. Jim Millen, our non-executive chairman, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with, having held the kind of joint role of CEO and chairman for the last few years. So the purpose of the meeting today is to kind of provide more details around kind of last week's announcement, where we communicated my appointment as CEO and director of PHYSIOMICS and Jim's continued support as chairman. So the intention is to spend probably the next 10-15 minutes giving a little introduction to myself, talk a tiny bit around the transition between myself and Jim, and provide you with my immediate areas of focus for the business. We will then go on to answering as many of your questions as possible, so we will spend the bulk of the time doing that. I know a lot of you will be keen to learn more about how the business is performing and have more details as to our future plans. So we are planning a kind of a follow-up investor meeting probably around the March time, as we've done previously, just to coincide with our post-interim results. So I know some of you might have heard from me during our last investor meeting back in November last year, but I wanted to take this opportunity to briefly introduce myself before talking more about the transition and my immediate areas of focus. So to give a bit of a background, so I'm originally from North Yorkshire here in the UK, where I spent the bulk of my formative years growing up around the coast of Scarborough. So during most of my childhood, I've always had a kind of a keen interest in science, and that is really kind of the driver why I kind of ended up in the University of Liverpool studying for my Bachelor of Science and then Masters at the School of Tropical Medicine there. My studies then took me down south to London, where I attained a PhD in biochemistry and biophysics from King's College London. This PhD was actually an industrial collaborative PhD, working with a biologics business, and that experience kind of gave me really the first taste for industry, and started me on my journey to understand more about the commercialization of research and ultimately the application of that research to healthcare. Following my PhD, rather than going into academia, I then decided to take the industry route, and I joined an in vitro diagnostic business over in Kent. I eventually headed up the research and development team for that business, being part of the senior management team. And during that time, my team and I were involved in developing a number of award-winning new products, and helped drive the revenues for that business quite significantly over a number of multiples. Us as a senior management team then positioned that company for sale and sold it to a larger group of in vitro diagnostic businesses, to which I kind of then joined. So my role at the larger business was helping them set up and lead an innovation team as kind of a search and evaluation function, going out building networks between academics and other industry partners around the UK and Europe primarily, looking for innovations and research which fell in line with our kind of corporate strategy. I was then involved in packaging those opportunities up into either joint venture partnerships or in-licensing deals to bring that and feed that into the group of businesses. After my time within in vitro diagnostics, I then went more towards the kind of the drug discovery and drug development world, and I joined a niche CRO based in London. My role within that business was to kind of lead a kind of a hybrid function, with one arm being focused around R&D, so developing new capabilities for our clinical trials facility, as well as developing new service arms. And the other arm was around kind of more of a commercially focused team, looking more at kind of business intelligence and kind of technical sales. So again, we were able to grow that business quite significantly, really kind of giving me exposure of and experiencing the do's and don'ts when scaling and developing new services. Following my time at that business, I then went and joined the National Institute for Health Research. So this is a funder of clinical research in the UK, and actually it's the largest funder of clinical research in the UK. And within that role, I led a team of business development professionals and advisors working closely with the UK government departments to support life science businesses across the globe enter the UK and develop their products and businesses here. So our team supported those companies with things like funding, expertise, and access to infrastructure. Finally, prior to joining PHYSIOMICS, I spent some time at Syneos Health Consulting. So this is part of the larger Syneos Health CRO, so clinical research organization. That role was I was in charge of and helped lead a global consultancy practice, kind of focused more around strategy management consultancy, focused again towards kind of biopharma, pharmaceuticals, so emerging to top tier pharmaceutical companies. And we were supporting them primarily around kind of R&D transformation projects. So what I mean there is supporting them in developing strategy to help them pivot towards new therapeutic areas, help them build new capabilities, implement new technologies, or even adapt their business processes to meet new regulatory requirements. So quite a varied kind of consultancy practice. So I hope you can see, going through that timeline very briefly, I have quite a varied background and experience, but I really do hope that my experience will be of value to PHYSIOMICS as in a business. And certainly having worked closely with Jim and the team over the last few months, I've already started identifying areas for change and opportunities for growth, which I'll perhaps touch upon in the next slide. So that's a bit about my background. I guess just to focus on the kind of the board and management changes announced last week. So Jim and I have been working towards this point over the last few months, and I certainly believe, along with our board, that these changes will help PHYSIOMICS take that kind of next significant step in its evolution. And I hope personally, I can bring a new perspective and new ideas to lead that kind of change required. Looking forward from here, as noted in the announcement, Jim will be still involved in the business, and this is why we're lucky to still have him on the call today. But he won't be just with us as the non-exec chairman, but he's offered to provide his continued support around the transition of key relationships we have and the knowledge he's built up over the years to myself and the team. We've also agreed that he will still play a role from an advisory perspective, supporting me myself where required. So I want to just touch upon kind of my immediate areas of focus, but perhaps before I do, I just want to acknowledge, kind of leading on from what I was just talking about regarding the transition, acknowledge kind of the work Jim has done over the last few years, really, in my mind, kind of stabilizing the ship here, laying those key foundations in our consultancy business, So, for instance, building kind of the BD function and pipeline as we have it today, as well as developing, the highly capable consultancy team we have delivering the consultancy projects. And the team, the quality of work that the team deliver is really reflected in the feedback we've been getting from our clients and the high level of repeat business we get as a business. But I always want to acknowledge the work that has been done around the personalized medicine tool and the various grants we've won over the years. So regarding my immediate focus, taking on this role as CEO, so this is now to build upon those foundations so we can grow and scale the business, driving revenues and really focused on turning this business into a profitable one. As I described in our last investor presentation, there are 3 immediate areas of focus for the business. The key one for me is around our core mathematical modeling business, whereby we support clients to derive insights and predictions from their data to help them accelerate and de-risk their drug development programs. As of today, this core service offering is where all our revenue is being generated, and therefore I feel it is important that we, keep this as a priority and remain focused on growing this side of the business. So how we will grow that business? So we will keep focusing on driving that pipeline, but not just look at bringing in, the increasing volume of leads into the top of the pipeline, but take a serious look at the conversion rate and how we can increase the conversion rate of those early leads into contracted work. I think we also need to take learn some lessons from last year, where we ended up being perhaps a bit overexposed to one specific client. So we keep pushing to kind of diversify our client base, having a healthy mix of emergent top-tier biopharma, keep on exploring relationships, which we have been doing with research institutes, but also kind of take a serious look at how we can leverage other service partners to enter into and expand in the market. Finally, we will also look at kind of how we broaden kind of our service offering into new therapeutic areas, as well as expand across the R&D continuum. Something which we've been doing already to this date, and actually we are currently delivering on a project in the dermatology space. So, many of you will be aware that PHYSIOMICS is primarily an oncology-focused consultancy. So we need to be looking at new therapeutic areas as well as new services across the kind of the R&D continuum. As well as putting in more energy into our BD, something I've already been working very closely with our head of business development on. I've also started working very closely with our technical team to look at how we can drive operational excellence on our and new capabilities, so we can offer more to our clients. So in addition to our core service offering, we will continue also to grow and build kind of adjacent service arms. We're starting off with biometrics as we communicated previously. So I know previously we've talked about biostatistics. So for those of you who are less familiar with this area, so biometrics is more of a kind of umbrella term, which includes biostatistics and statistical programming. So I'll probably be using that kind of that word kind of going forward in a lot of these presentations. We feel that kind of biometrics is the next evolutionary step for our core business, because it leverages a lot of our kind of core expertise in mathematical and data sciences to offer kind of a service which we feel is scalable and should hopefully help us grow the business quicker. So recently we have kicked off a number of key initiatives around this service that should really help us accelerate the development of the biometric service. But hopefully I can provide some more detail in the next investor meeting in March. So the third area is around our personalized medicines. So I know many of you are aware that even though PHYSIOMICS, were considered primarily as a consultancy business, We also are and have been developing new tools to be used in the kind of personalized medicine space, certainly around kind of supporting kind of cancer treatments. We announced last year that along with our partners, we've been awarded funding through Innovate UK to help generate more data and aid the refinement of the new tools we've developed. So this program is running well and is on track, and we're looking to set up the observational clinical trial with our partners over the next few months. So we are going to be remain committed to this program, but in addition, we are going to relook at our plans around personalized medicine, our go-to-market and development plans, and look at how we can kind of generate more value around this asset quicker, and where to kind of focus our efforts going forward. So I think that's all I was going to cover. I know that is quite brief, but maybe we can stop there, Jim, and focus on answering some questions. As I did say earlier, we are planning another investor meeting in the coming months where I can provide more detail as to our progress. But thank you.
Great, thanks, Pete, for that very clear presentation. So we received quite a few questions via the website prior to the meeting. I don't see any new ones have come in so far during the presentation, but we'll spend as much time as we need to go through as many of the questions that came in prior to the meeting as we can. So first question here comes from a shareholder saying Pete took on the role as COO. Does that role need to be filled again? So Pete, maybe you'd like to comment on that.
Yeah, no, I can do, yeah. I guess the short answer is no, we will not be looking to replace the COO role at this point in time. So, joining PHYSIOMICS as a COO back in September has allowed me to, work closely with you, Jim, over the last few months, allowed me to kind of learn about the business, and has enabled us to kind of transition to where we are now. I would say, though, however, as we, look to kind of grow the business, and consider what expertise and capabilities are required as we do so, maybe a COO role would be needed in the future. But the short answer is, in the immediate timeline, no, we won't be.
Okay, great, thank you. A related question, will Pete be getting a pay rise at this point, and will I be getting a pay cut? There's also a question around options. So maybe you want to take the first part of that, yeah, Pete, and I'll take the second.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, so my pay will not be changing. That is what we agreed, you and I, Jim, when I joined in September. However, as a result of the transition, Jim's salary will reduce on the same basis as the previous chair. So taken into, in its totality, this should be a significant cost savings to the business.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know whether, Jim, you want to comment on the second part of that question.
In terms of options, yeah, I mean, there will be an award of options in relation to Pete's ascension to the position of CEO. That's under discussion currently, and will be announced in the normal way via RNS in the near future. So that's just one to watch out for. Next question, although the board changes were mooted after Peter came in, why this date? Okay, so basically the question is there any significance to the fact that we announced the changes on the 22nd of January, apart from the fact that it was a Monday? Pete?
No, there isn't any significance to the timing. We've been, as I said, we've been working together for some months now, and we didn't feel it was appropriate to transition too close to the end of the year around the festive season, nor did we think it was suitable to kind of transition too close to the start of January when we came back. So by the time we went through the relevant steps which we needed to do leading up to this transition, it just took us naturally almost, I guess, 3 weeks into the month. So no, there wasn't any significance to the timing.
Perfect.
So I think there's a couple of questions maybe I can ask you,
Yes,
Jim.
go for it.
Yeah. So the first one, yeah, they're both linked. So, Jim, can you expand on your commitment to Physiomic's as the non-exec chairman going forward? And another one which is linked is, how long will you remain in the business?
Great. Okay, thanks for those, Pete. I mean, the short answer is, that I'm remain entirely committed to ensuring the success of the business. Obviously, some of what I was doing previously, Pete will be doing going forwards, although in reality, behind the scenes, that's already been going on for the last 5 months, and it's gone very smoothly, which is what led us to the decision to pull the trigger on this a couple of weeks ago. So I remain, available for Pete on an advisory basis. I will, remain closely involved in all aspects of the business, and you don't need to worry about me disappearing. I will be here to support Pete and the team to continue to work with clients where I have a close relationship with them, continue to beat the bushes for new business, and continue to help set the strategic direction of the company in collaboration with my other non-executive board members. So hopefully that addresses that question. Moving on, there's quite an interesting question here, Pete, which is, what will you be doing differently to grow revenue? So maybe you want to spend a couple of minutes commenting on that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I am conscious that the areas of immediate focus I kind of presented earlier in my slides, around growing the core business and the biometrics business, we have discussed before. But where I see the difference being is more in how we grow these areas. I guess the kind of devil's in the details, so to speak. Just to kind of give a few examples of that. So, and I think I touched upon this in the slides earlier. So, the pipeline has got momentum. I think, we've had a very busy last few months with kind of chasing down leads and driving these opportunities, which is all great. What I'm keen to look at is, how do we increase that conversion rate from those early leads into contracts, bringing the technical expertise earlier into the conversations and supporting in the solutioning of those new projects. So I guess that's one area. Again, I touched upon this earlier around broadening our offer. So not just kind of focused on the core services we've been delivering to date, so kind of around the kind of translation and kind of preclinical phases, but also looking at how we can support kind of companies further upstream into discovery. Something which we've started doing to a certain extent recently around helping one specific company around target identification. But also, as I mentioned previously, around expanding into new therapeutic areas. A lot of our expertise and capabilities is kind of disease agnostic to a large extent. So, being able to focus on other disease areas really expands that kind of client base for us. Other areas I can see would really help us kind of grow the revenue. I mentioned before about leveraging partnerships with other service providers. I think, increasing efforts just generally around our business development. As I mentioned previously, I have been working closely with our head of business development, and we've just over the last few weeks finalized our business development marketing plans for this year. And we're certainly making a big step up in our efforts compared to previous years. So we're more events, more kind of by partnering events. We've got a really good kind of pipeline of publications, and we're in the process of refreshing some of our marketing materials. So hopefully all of that kind of new energy will really help translate into new contracts soon. And then lastly, kind of as around the biometrics, kind of the new service arm. As I mentioned, we We are just at the start of our journey here, but again, this last few weeks, we've started exploring some options and kicked off some initiatives that I, really believe will accelerate the development of that new offering.
Great, thanks, Pete. There is another question about expanding into new scientific areas, but I actually think you covered the answer to that in your response just now. So
Yeah.
maybe we'll move on to, okay, I mean, this is a slightly sort of facetious question, but there is actually a sort of serious answer. Apparently, I mentioned in the past that I had a spreadsheet on my wall with all of the deals and what stage of progress they were at, and will Pete be using the same spreadsheet, or will he be using something different? But maybe it just gives us a chance to comment on how we do track our client work, Pete.
To be fair, Jim, I didn't realize you had a spreadsheet on your wall, but in short, yes, we do keep track of our pipeline and other partnerships. We actually use Salesforce, the CRM solution, which I'm sure many of you will be familiar with. And I have access to Salesforce whenever I need it, so I can view which companies we're engaging with, where each of the opportunities are in their development. I also then sit down with our head of business development very frequently, and actually just earlier on today, I sat down with her and Jim to go through the pipeline to see how we're progressing each lead and see whether there's anything we can do to kind of help accelerate those opportunities.
Great.
So yeah, we keep tracking them, and we keep kind of chasing down the leads as hard as we can.
Great, thanks, Pete. Then there's a couple of further questions on the pipeline, actually. One was in relation to the number of deals that are close to signing, and the other one in relation to the total value of the pipeline. And just generally, I think that there's been a lot of interest in the size and the nature of the pipeline. So I don't know if you want to comment on that now, Pete.
Yeah, sure. So look, we're not going to provide a formal update on the pipeline today, but we will aim to do so in that investor presentation I mentioned, which we'll look to hold in March. I can say, however, that since our last investor meeting back in November, we have made significant progress in the number of opportunities, helping kind of evaluate. Apologies for this, for my computer putting up my thumb. I don't know what it's doing that for progressing these opportunities across the pipeline. But we've also been able to add new opportunities to the front end, and certainly over the last month, especially, we've been extremely busy within business development. We've had many client meetings, and the signals are very, very positive coming from our clients. As we kind of sign new deals, we will obviously announce those in kind of the usual way. So we'll submit kind of RNSs to announce those.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll just add to say, it's a bit of a generalism, but I think in light of the sort of current environment for biotech, I'm actually very, very pleased with the level of engagement that we're getting from both existing and from new clients. Obviously, we want, and you want us to convert that into signed projects. Just know that we're working extremely hard to do that. And as Pete said, please watch this space for further announcements.
Yeah.
The next question relates to Project Optimus. One shareholder was wondering whether or not there are, to what extent that comes up in contract discussions, basically.
Yeah. So yeah, Project Optimus is certainly often a topic in conversation kind of during many of our client discussions. A lot of the companies we talk to are aware of the FDA initiative. Some of them listened into our webinar we delivered last year. But I think more generally, I think businesses and biopharma companies are more conscious, more kind of generally, of the importance of better characterizing the dose and schedule of their therapeutic. because ultimately, better use of that R&D data to support those kind of future research decisions and design is going to ultimately help them with getting a return on investment on their assets, quicker. So, yeah, it does come up in conversations, and certainly I think that will help us going forward as a company, which helps those businesses derive insights to support research design.
Okay, great. Thanks, Pete. Then there's a few questions that came in more recently in the last day or two. One was to the effect that the market cap of the company is not as high as we would want it to be. What does the board intend to do to deliver shareholder value? Are we effectively undervalued is the essence of the question. So what I would say is that, we, the board, and the employees of the company are working extremely hard to, initially recover from what was obviously quite a difficult year last financial year, as has been previously discussed. And I believe we're succeeding in doing that. Obviously, until this full year plays out, we can't say that we have definitively succeeded, but all I can say at this point is, so far so good. And we're doing that by significantly, developing our core business, as Pete mentioned, working hard to expand into adjacent areas of consulting that, may not deliver huge revenues in the current financial year, but we genuinely believe have significant potential going forwards. And then also, pressing forwards on the personalized medicine offering, and specifically in relation to grant work and to collaborations with collaborators such as DoseMe and Beyond Blood. There's a couple of specific questions on that coming up, so I won't elaborate on that now. And I believe that as we make progress towards achieving what we're aiming for in these three different areas, then that should be reflected in the company's share price going forwards. So I am optimistic going forwards. And by the way, I'll just answer a question that came in while Pete was speaking, which is, how confident do we feel about the prospects over the next 12 months? And I would say, confident and optimistic. That's subjective, but that's my personal view. There are just a couple more. I think they will have my name against them. So any news on DoseMe? It's been a while since you heard news. Have we derived any income from the partnership yet? Related question, how significant could the tool be for entry into the USA market? And how close are we to a formal partnership with DoseMe RX? So really, just to very briefly recap and remind people, we partnered with DoseMe a few years back. Then DoseMe basically, was divested from their mother company, Tabula Rasa, at the beginning of 2023. And in the year up to that divestment, DoseMe had obviously been less active than previously. Since the new management's come into place, obviously they've had to pick up and run with what the old management left them. They've been working hard to try and get their own internal plans on track. And we have been engaging with them over the last over the sort of second half of last year. We still have an ongoing dialogue with them, and we're actively pursuing a number of initiatives whereby our tool could potentially be used in the US market, perhaps initially in a research capacity, but that's still really interesting for us because it gives us an opportunity to generate some exposure to the tool from key customers and clients of DoseMe, who would eventually become key customers and clients of ours indirectly through the use of the tool. We, as I think we've covered before, the agreement that we had with DoseMe originally was a research agreement. It wasn't a commercial agreement. I think when we get to the point where there's clear demand from US users for the tool, then we will be able to convert that into a commercial agreement with DoseMe. I think the other thing to say is that DoseMe's model, being primarily cloud-based, means that at the point when we do and mutually decide that we want to move to a commercialization phase, that will be quite quick. Because DoseMe's clients use the tool on a cloud-based platform, and it doesn't require a complicated and lengthy rollout. So, we're still very excited about the possibilities that the US offers for our dosing tool. We're in active discussions with DoseMe, in addition, obviously, to working hard on the grant project, and the two things go hand in glove. So we will update you further as we have material news to announce, but it's still a live project, and we still have a lot of interest in this area and believe that it could be value adding for the company as a whole. Then the last question was about the share register and how often we update it. So this is in relation to significant shareholders, so shareholders with over 3%. With over 3% shareholding. The question is that these updates have been made every 6 months, with the next update due in February. Is that likely to change? And the short answer is no. It's not straightforward for us to do this, by the way, because obviously a lot of shareholders do not hold shares directly through Crest, but hold them through private client brokers. And the process that we have to go through in order to try and get a view on who the beneficial shareholders are involves us paying somebody to go and ask every single private client broker for information on the beneficial owners. And it can be done, but it is a cost to the company. So I think we will continue to do it every 6 months. And of course, as significant shareholders pass through a centile threshold in their shareholding, they ought to be sending their TR1 forms through to us, whether that's increasing or decreasing their shareholding. That's their responsibility, not the company's, clearly. But as we receive those forms, then we immediately issue them through RNS without delay. So if there are any significant changes that are reported to us, we will let you know. And then every 6 months, twice a year, we will go through this exercise where we go beat the bushes with the private client brokers in order to get the best view that we can on what the current state of play is with individual significant shareholders. So that is all of the questions that came in prior to the meeting. It's, I think, also all of the questions that have come in during the presentation. And unless there's anything else now, I will hand back to the moderator to close.
Perfect, Jim, Peter, thank you very much for answering all of those questions. And of course, the company will review all the questions submitted today and will publish those responses out on the Investor Meet Company platform. But just before redirecting investors, provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important to you both. Peter, could I just ask you for a few closing comments?
Yeah, no, sure. Well, I just wanted to thank you all for attending the investor meeting today. I hope you found it useful and informative. I think personally, I'm certainly excited about the future of the business and energized about the coming 12 months and on. As I said, we will be looking to run another investor presentation meeting in kind of March time to coincide with our post-interim results. So we will be sure to kind of provide more information then. Look, thanks very much.
Perfect. Peter, Jim, thank you once again for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, and I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of PHYSIOMICS PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good afternoon to you all.